Good morning. Welcome to Tip Off. Hope you're well. Welcome to my hotel room in Cleveland where it's a bit snowy out and cold, but nothing too terrible. Actually, last night was relatively pleasant. Went to a nice Lebanese restaurant with two friends of mine who I actually know people in Cleveland. Hope you're well. A lot of different things to talk about because we haven't caught up since Friday after the Jazz great win over Miami. So we've got the Friday, Saturday. There's some NFL stuff. There's Bounty Gate. There's BYU's loss, so I'll try to touch on all of it. I was trying to think, do I have anything funny to start with today? And the only funny thing I have to start with today is that I follow a bunch of our jazz dancers on Twitter, uh, because I do, and they're working their butt off, and they're part of the organization, so it's great. But it is hysterical to see what 18, 19-year-old, 20, and 21-year-olds retweet. I had more insight from Khloe Kardashian or T. Whistler or people I have never heard of, and I'm wondering why I'm really taking their advice. Wizkilla, who evidently, I have no idea who this is. I'm sure I should, but I don't. Who evidently has 500,000 people living on of his advice, has informed me through one of my friends to never live with regret. All bad experiences are just great life lessons. Oh, thanks. Thanks. And then, I mean, with Chloe last night told me to never go to bed mad, always to kiss and make up before they go to bed. I think she might have been the first person to ever make this up. Yeah. So, anyway, they're good people. It's just hysterical when I run through my Twitter account and all of a sudden I'm like, why is Chloe Card? Oh, that's why. Sorry, I am battling a cold, a chest cold, and a head cold, which is, if you're going to do it, it's better to do it on the road. Just sleep and work and not have to worry about being a parent while you feel like crap. So I apologize, and I will try to, with a microphone right up close, there can be a sniffle or a thing, but I'm sweating and all sorts of crap. So that sucks. But let's just deal with it, fight through the day, right? All right. Heat win. Awesome performance. Group effort. What I loved most about it was the fact that the Jazz took control of the game against the Tire. They got the Heat on the right spot of the schedule with a TNT game on Thursday and the Sunday game against the Lakers, and they took complete advantage of it. And I thought that was, and by taking advantage of it, what I mean is that they took the game and they never really relented until LeBron went superhuman. The offensive rebounding and fight on the glass was awesome, and overall, I just thought it was great. I'll tell you the thing that jumps out to me more than anything else on this team. The four best defensive players on this team are Gordon Hayward, Alec Burks, Derek Favors, and Ennis Cantor. To some extent, it's because they're the four best players on this team. And what I mean by that is there's a reason why guys get drafted where they get drafted. And those are the four highest drafted players on our roster, I think, unless I'm missing somebody. But Josh is a late first-round draft pick. Al was a mid-first-round draft pick. Raj was undrafted. CJ second. Paul second. Those kids are just more talented than anybody else on our roster. Because, every draft's a little different, frankly. It's very funny when you prep for a game and you see, like, so-and-so's the 10th pick of this draft and somebody else is the 10th pick of that draft. You're like, woo, those were different drafts. But they're the four best defensive players. Favors is the best defensive player on this team right now. He makes a bunch of mistakes, but he's so gifted that he covers it up. There was an unbelievably great play either at the end of the first quarter the other night in Dallas or the second quarter where those guys all rotated, got to their spots, did just great things. And I'll tell you what, it was just, I think it was late first, and Cantor ends up running out on the shooter in the corner, which means the rotations are perfect by the time you get there. And he dribbles by him, and then Favors, who'd been a part of the pick and roll on the far left side, got all the way to the right. I was trying to put it up from Synergy and do a playbook on it for you on Locked on Jazz, but Synergy's been down for the weekend. The irony of Synergy being down on the same weekend of the Sloan Sports Conference. Luckily, all the geeks were busy. So anyway, I thought the Heat game was great. The Mavs game, you really don't expect to win. There were a bunch of things that drove me nuts, and and I'm lost on. I asked Ron this after the game from a coaching standpoint. Tyrone's biggest strength, I think, this year is that he's given guys enough leash during their struggles that he's gotten them back. So Raja struggles, he gets him back. Devin struggles, he gets him back. At the same time, when I see a guy not run back down the floor, or when I see a guy just not be playing defense the way you're supposed to play defense, or when I see a guy take a that's my turn shot, and you don't yank him, are you giving tacit approval? And the thing is that every coach in this league is completely living in fear of losing his team, which makes sense. Cheers, little caribou this morning. It's okay. It's not great. That was coffee for those of you on the audio version. Those of you on the video version, you just get me sitting backed into a corner against a really gorgeous cheese ball, whatever these curtain. So that's the one thing that I don't quite get because in Dallas game, there were some moments that drove me crazy, just drove me bananas. And I understand you're probably not winning that game, but there were some things that could have been done a lot better. And I don't really feel like that game was particularly close, to be honest with you. I never thought we were in it um, and had much of a chance. So that was, Miami was just awesome. Those are the games that, that drives the season and brings these guys together. But it was interesting. If you listen to Jeff Van Gundy with Bill Simmons, which was a very good podcast on the BS Report, Van Gundy talked about road wins and the collectiveness of road wins and how that brings a team together and what the 10 minutes in the locker room after that was like. And we don't have that. We haven't had that moment yet. And that's going to be something this team has to gain. And it's got to be bigger than a Cleveland or a Charlotte. It's got to be a Sixers or a Bulls and I don't know if we can get it. The thing that jumped out at me around the league when I watched a ton of basketball last night. I mean, I don't feel great, so I went out for dinner with some friends and then just came in and watched NBA.com broadband. And there were great games all day, starting with the Celtics Knicks, which we were flying for most of, but we got the end of. And then obviously that Lakers Heats game was great, and then the Clipper Rocket game went down to the wire, and the Denver Spurs game was good late, and there were two others that were really good also. This is a stars league. We can talk about all the other stuff we want to talk about, but this is a stars league. Dirk's performance against us on Saturday, LeBron's performance on Friday. You'll win some games without a star. Denver wins last night, but they were a disaster down the stretch. That was my concern with them at the beginning of the year. I love their roster, their depth, but unless Gallinari developed into a go-to guy late in the game, they just don't have any idea where to go with the ball. Now without Gallinari, they still got to win last night. I mean, their roster is so deep and so impressive. But you have to have a star. It's just Houston couldn't get it done last night against the Clippers with numerous chances because they don't have a star. And Chris Paul is making every play imaginable. Kevin Martin just isn't that guy. Philadelphia went down to the wire last night on Chicago. Andre Iguodala is just not a star. Derrick Rose makes an absurd play late. We can talk about all of these other things. But the fact of the matter is, it is a stars league. And until you get a star, you cannot finish in the top 4 in either conference. And to me, that should be the goal every year. That you've got to get in the top 4 of your conference to be able to then hope you get a matchup or two, win a series, get to the conference finals, and then see if you can sneak into the finals. And we know that. I mean, Darren showed last night with 57 how special he is, and we won a lot of games because of Darren. And frankly, Boozer has has gotten less good since he's left Utah, which makes you maybe believe Darren was even better. And John and Carl, we know it, but that's for all of our analysis pieces, uh, that's where we are. I'm gonna head to shoot around today. Continue to follow me on Twitter at @LockedOnSports. We'll see if Raj is back. What happens? I will say, I a lot of people are asking the question of why C.J. Miles is getting minutes that Gordon Hayward probably could get, and I think it's a very legitimate question. The answer, I believe, is that in that lineup with Watson, Burks, Cantor, and Favors, Ty thinks he needs someone who can score. And that is probably why he's doing that. I don't know that for a fact, but that's my guess. Um, since you all know what a numbers person I am, you probably can guess what I think of that. I just don't like inefficient scores. I'd rather run out of shot clock, frankly, half the time. That's a little bit of an exaggeration. Overboard. All right, quickly, a few NFL notes. If you don't like the NFL, you can leave this. I will always Jazz first, NBA first, and then Utah sports and some other things. I love the NFL, and I probably get to focus on it more now than because I get to choose the topics. The Bounty Gate is a big, big deal. I think that someone's going to be out of the league for over a year. It rule it rips at the fabric of everything Roger Goodell is trying to do with this league to make it pleasant. The NFL is on a dangerous precipice of where the game has gotten too dangerous. And parents in youth sports are not going to have their kids play in the NFL or not going to have their kids play football. And if you lose youth sports, you lose where your game's going. And Goodell knows this. And so you can't have this. I wouldn't. I think this is going to be an enormous statement by Roger Goodell, and I think the punishment is going to be as far as he can go without ending up in legal action. So, in other words, I don't think he can ban Greg Williams for life, but I think he'd like to. He might. It's a big deal. You can't have it. You cannot have a league where guys, even though they are playing a game that can hurt people, where they have a bounty out on trying to hurt your other employees. You can't have it. And for all of you out there that are, you're making the game soft. That boat, you're wrong, and you're outdated, and you got to stop with that argument because the danger that is on that field is so extreme that they have to do something about it. And you can continue to argue that, and you can continue to make that argument, but there's a bunch of issues we've always had where at some point your argument has lost its foundation, and that's where you are on this one. There's some polls that came out today that might say that about some other issues in life too. The final thing I would say is I find this a very interesting thing going on in the NFL right now. We're going to have the draft coming up here, and no one's going to draft running backs. Trent Richardson's maybe a first-round pick, but there's a chance no one's going to go in the first round. And yet, the Seahawks decide to roll out a bankroll for Marshawn Lynch, and the Texans decide to put out a bankroll for Arian Foster today. This, to me, seems really contrary to what the right thing to do is. Now, the reason we're not drafting running backs might be because of guys like Arian Foster, who, if I remember correctly, is undrafted and then becomes the best running back in the NFL. So one of the reasons we're not drafting running backs is because it's just a crapshoot. We're not sure which ones are the best. And the other thing is that running backs get hit a few times and they really fade. But the issue with running backs getting hit and then fading, it leads to me to believe that very few of these contracts given to running backs have been the right move. I think Tennessee would love to get out of their Chris Johnson deal. I think the Seahawks in the past would have loved to get out of their Sean Alexander deal. The Steelers would have loved to get out of the Rashard Mendenhall deal. It's as though you have this whole philosophy on running backs. They can come from anywhere. They can come cheap. You don't want to draft them and spend a lot of money in the early round draft picks, and you'll find them. Then you get them and they play well for you, and you become addicted to them, and you lose your premise on how it's supposed to work. I really think anytime you sign one of these running backs to a long-term deal, it might be a real mistake. So keep an eye on that. Final thing, too bad BYU could not get going against Gonzaga. Boy, they got boat raced in that. Um, you know what? They have a system and a style they play, and when their players are just a notch off, which they are this year, then they almost look out of control. I mean, when Carlino is just not as good a shooter, and some of the other guys aren't as good as shooters as the years past, and you're jacking shots at that speed, boy, it comes back to get you the other way. I hope they make the dance so they get that opportunity, though I could make a pretty strong argument that the better thing for BYU basketball, considering most of these guys are going to come back, um, is to go play the NIT and go get to play 6 or 7 games. All right, that's tip-off from Cleveland. I'll keep you updated on a bunch of stuff. Go to Locked On Jazz today for all the latest. See ya.